Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory unto the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, whose names are Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. First off, Yahweh being the name of the Father who the world ignorantly called God, whose name in the Hebrew means He is, He exists, He is to be. Secondly, the Son, who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, whose name means He is salvation. He saves, He delivers. I like to give double honors unto the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone, the men who rule and teach well, and set the blueprint for us brothers striving to make our calling and election sure. I like to give a sincere shalom to hopeful elect men, those 144,000 hopeful elect men scattered abroad, pushing this truth and righteousness and sincerity. I'm the brother Dalath from the great millstone branch of Las Vegas, coming in the spirit once again. This is another lesson going into the ahlapbayath, otherwise known as the Hebrew alphabet. Like I said, today we'll be going into the character Da, which is short for Dalath. In Hebrew, Dalath means door or pathway. Originally it was drawn, for the pictograph. It was the shape of a door or a tent flap. See, the ancient Israelites, they understood that a door was more than just a point of entering and leaving. It symbolized the choice between two paths, the path of wickedness and the path of righteousness. Because spiritually, a door, it represents opportunity and protection, as well as separation, between the inside and the outside of the house. It also represents humility, you know, humility for the one that stoops to enter that door, that humbles themselves down to accept the path presented to them, ultimately by the Lord. Because anybody could be presented with an opportunity, or a temptation, which that word temptation goes into the word test. Anybody can be presented with a test and fail. um, we gotta use that spiritual discernment to be able to maneuver in a righteous manner into picking, like I said, the right door. Because if we don't, we go uh, leading into our own understanding. There's consequences for that. So says Proverbs 14:12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. So those are the consequences of leading into your own understanding and trying to make your own path, uh, that leads away from the path that the Lord has intended for you. So the Most High, He places doors before men. Some lead to life, and some lead to destruction. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said, all these doors are opportunities and tests. I like to go into Deuteronomy 30, 30 and 19 in the NLT. Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life so that you and your descendants might live. You can make this choice by loving the Lord Yahweh your power, obeying Him, and committing yourself firmly to Him. This is the key to your life. And if you love and obey the Lord Yahweh, you will live long in the land the Lord Yahweh swore to give your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So yeah, that's um that's how you make sure that you choose that righteous pathway, righteous door, by committing yourself firmly into the Lord. And first and foremost, as it says in First Thessalonians 5 and 17, I believe, pray without ceasing. When you wake up in the morning, send your prayers, your blessings and curses um, up, and make sure that the Lord protects your thoughts for the day, and gives you strength in your decision making. Gives you that the spirit of discernment to be able to maneuver through these obstacles that are presented to you through the Lord. These opportunities and tests. Uh, by not only not leaning into your own understanding, but by just turning yourself unto the Lord and giving Him um, full control. Um, and go to Proverbs 3, 3 and 5. If this thing loads up, bear with me for a second. There it goes. Proverbs 3 and 5 and then LT. Trust in the Lord Yahweh with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Like you said, you lean into your own understanding, and it leads to the way of death. It tells you to seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. So yeah, that right door, the correct door of righteousness, that righteous pathway is not known by emotion. The Most High doesn't deal with emotion. He deals in the spirit. But that's how we know. It's like, yeah, that's how we know if we're making the right choice, because we're moving and making that decision through the spirit, and using that spiritual discernment to figure out whether the choice we're making aligns with the word of the Most High. It has to align. It has to align with the spirit of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, because Yahweh Shai, He is the word of the Most High. So says Revelations 19 and 13. It says His name was called the Word of Yahweh. Actually, let me go into that just to show you guys. Revelations 19 and 13. It's just talking about Yahweh Shai. You can see when you go to the 12th, it's the 12th verse, His eyes were of a flaming fire, and His head had many crowns, and He had a name written that no man knew but Himself, and He was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and His name is called the Word of Yahweh. You can see plainly, obviously, that's talking about Yahweh Shai. You know, um, like I said, His name is the Word of Yahweh. So, Him being the Word of Yahweh would obviously make Him, that Dalath, that righteous door, pathway that leads unto the Lord. He aligns perfectly with the word of Yahweh, because He is the word of Yahweh. So says Revelations 19 and 13. And next I want to go into John 10 and 9, showing that He is that door, He is that Dalath. Actually, I'm gonna go up to from the seventh verse, and then go on down to the ninth. Uh, which says right here, then saith Yahweh Shai. This is in the red letter too, so this is how you know it's Yahweh Shai speaking. And also, like I said, also says it right here in the 7th. Then said Yahweh Shai unto them again, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. Who are the sheep? It's Israel. We are the lost sheep. Um, that are scattered. That he sent. His laborers. The prophets to gather up. But we can only enter into the fold through him. So that's why it says he is the door of the sheep. And you go on to the 9th verse, it says, I am the door, by me, if any man enter, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. So yeah, this shows that Dalath illustrates the role of Yahweh Shai as the way of access to Yahweh. He's the only entrance into salvation. Um, to back that, I want to go into the 14th verse. The 14th chapter, in the 6th verse, says, Yahweh Shai saith unto him, I am the truth and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Like I said, that was just a backup to show that he is that only entrance into um, the fold, not unto the kingdom and unto the Father ultimately. Because just as every house has a door, no one enters the Father's house except through Yahweh. He has full authority over, like I said, salvation and the kingdom. He's very strict with who enters that door, because ultimately that door is reserved for the elect. It's all up to you whether you. Ultimately the decision's his, but whether you're doing what's required of you for him to allow you, through that door, it's all up to you. You know, he could hold that door firmly open for you, or he could shut that door firmly on you. And once it's shut, it's shut. Uh, like I said, only you could play a part in the yes or the no. Nobody else. Once if he's holding that door open for you, ain't no one about to come and shut it on you. That's his decision and his decision alone. But it's your decision whether you're gonna put in the work required of you to be able to for him to grant you access. Um, I'm gonna go into Revelations 3 and 7. Concerning that door that he's reserving for the elect. Like I said, it's up to you. You could have him hold that door open for you. You know, or he could just shut it in your face, and there's nothing you could do about it. Um, where am I? Revelations 3 and 7. Yeah. It says, and to the angel of the church of Philadelphia, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, and he that hath the key of David. This is Yahushua speaking about himself. Basically him saying that he had the key of David, meaning he has authority. He has the key to the house of David. He has authority over David's throne in the kingdom. It's just, that's just another way of saying that he has full authority. just like I said earlier, he has that full authority over salvation and the kingdom, and that's backing it up right there. You know, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. So yeah, boom, right there. If he wants to hold it open for you for as long as he wants to hold it open, then that's what he's gonna do, and no man can shut it. But once he shuts it on you, there ain't nothing you could do to open that door back again. You know, uh, so says Acts 4 and I believe 11. Let me go into it just to back up that point of, you know, um, he's the dictator of salvation, because it says in Acts 4, there is salvation in no one else. And I just wanted to go show, just to show it, just so brothers can see with their own eyes. I'm not just saying it. um, Acts 4 and 11. This is the stone which was set at naught of you builders, which has become the head of the corner. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Point blank, period. That says it right there. There's no questions about it. No room for debate. Yahweh Shai is that door unto salvation. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is. Um, what else? What else do I got? So yeah, that was pretty much the lesson. I don't want to keep it going for too long. I just wanted to do a quick hit on this one. You know, before I close out, I just want to go into one more point about this door. You know, um, and what it represents. Obviously Yahweh. I mean, Slakia Yahweh Shai. But there's a significance of that door that we don't really kind of look past, and we partake in it every year. At least, you know, um, we're supposed to. What I'm talking about is the Passover. Because during that first Pesach, Israel marked that doorpost with the blood of the lamb. You can find that when you go into the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter, and the 7th verse. It says, and they shall take the blood, speaking of the blood of the lamb, and strike it on the two side posts of the upper door posts. Salakia. And they shall take the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses, wherein they shall eat. That was the commandment. Going out, that giving the instructions on what to do. That we're supposed to. It says if you read up in the beginning, that we get the lamb, and we set it aside, and then on the day of the Passover, we slaughter it, save that blood. Uh, Obviously cook the lamb without breaking none of the bones. You cook it whole. Um, and with that blood, you would dip hyssop in the blood, and smear it on the doorpost as the Lord commanded. Now let's go down to the 13th verse. This is saying once you smear that, smear that blood on the doorpost, this will take place. It says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt." Oh, Salakia, this is supposed to be the third verse, but I'm going to just keep going anyway. "Both men and beasts, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord Yahweh, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So yeah, from that point on, the door or Dalath, became a sign of deliverance. Today, spiritually, deliverance comes through Yahweh Shai. That Dalath, the Yahweh Shai being the true Passover lamb. And just like um, everybody within the household that had the blood smeared on the doorpost was exempt from judgment. Um, you know, us within the house of David and Laura will, the house of the elect. As far as right now, we're in the house of the hopeful elect. We'll figure out who's actually within that household once we reach the kingdom, and this is all said and done. But the point is, in the same way, our ancestors were spared from judgment in the old times through the blood of that first Passover lamb. Us brothers and sisters within the household of the elect, Lord will, when the time comes, we will be exempt of judgment through the blood of Yahweh Shai. That we're covered in as now spiritually. Um, so that was pretty much that. The significance of the Dalath, and how it goes into Yahweh Shai, our Lord and Savior. Because like I said in my previous lessons about ahlapbayath, every character from the Ad to the Tha represents Yahweh Shai and his, shows his attributes in one way or another. So pretty much study, brothers. Build yourself up in this word and in the spirit, and pray daily, brothers. I can't say it enough. All this work that we put in, and studying that we do. Um, if we can't even pray for the wisdom to know how to use it, then uh, what good is it to us? Pray for that spiritual discernment, that when these opportunities and doors are presented to us, because they are going to be presented to us, we might have, every day, just count on it every day, because every day there's a choice to be made. There's not one day that we don't wake up and aren't presented, just because it doesn't seem like uh, a life or death, or decision at the moment. Spiritually, it's always a life or death situation. Everything is a life or death situation when it comes to the spirit, and um, that's the one we really need to be concerned about. Because when this is all said and done, this this fleshly body, this bag of bones, we can't take it with us. The spirit is what ultimately is what it's going to come down to. And if we're spiritually dead, once this body passes away, then that's what we're going to remain, spiritually dead. you know um so anyway, like I said, I don't want to drag this on. That was the lesson. Lord willing, it was edifying unto the body. The brothers and sisters listening out there, shalom. I like to close out by saying Kal Halayim La, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Habachakwadash.
Mashana Kawabadium Lahazaquanium Shagarwa Wakab. Sincere Shalom to the 144,000 hopeful elect brothers pushing this word in righteousness, sincerity, and in all faith, and unto you 1/3 women and children, seeking out your salvation with fear and trembling, unto you and your households. I give a sincere shalom, wa barakatah, and until next time, abababa, aman.